Welcome back. Today, we are going to revise the poem The Legend of Northland by Phoebe Carey. And in this, I've brought for you exclusive explanation, literary devices, theme, self-evaluation test of 25 questions, and MCQs, 10 questions. So it is a complete package that you can only avail at English for all reasons good, based on the CBSE guidelines and syllabus. Now, before I move on, take a while and just go and hit the like button. And also, don't forget to subscribe. So let's get started. The stanza 1 of the poem. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. Now, here, the poet in the very first line uses the literary device of repetition, away, away. So, here, the poet is laying emphasis on the distance, very far away in Northland, where during winter season days are very short and nights are so long that people living there cannot sleep throughout the night. So, emphasis at the distance, and also the poet is telling us about the winter season. The kind of winter season is there in Northland. There, the days are very short and nights are so long that people living there cannot sleep throughout the night. So, this is Northland. So, it is covered with snow. As you can see, completely white. Now we come to stanza 2. So here then the poet tells us more about the place where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bears' cubs in their funny furry clothes. So now the poet further tells us that at this place people harness is to tie or to strap reindeers to sledges, as you can see here in the picture. So reindeers to sledges when it snows and use them for transportation. He adds that children there look like cute bear cubs in their oversized furry clothes that they wear to beat the chill. So since it is very cold there, so children there are often seen in funny furry clothes. So they are funny because they are oversized and they are wearing too many clothes to beat the chill. Now we move on. Next stanza. So they tell them a curious story. I don't believe it is true. And yet you may learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. So now the poet says in this stanza that the parents or the elders in Northland tell their children a strange story, which the poet himself doesn't believe to be true, but he says that he would tell this story because the reader or the listener may learn a lesson from it. So the poet feels that if he or she will tell this story to the readers or to the listeners, they might learn a lesson from it. Now, stanza 4. Once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching, just as he did, you know. So, now from here, the story begins. So, the poet says, once upon a time, when the good Saint Peter lived in this world, he used to walk about the world and preach people just as all saints do. So, this is a story about one Saint Peter who lived in this world, and while he was living in this world, he used to go on rounds to preach people just as all saints do. So, he came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. So, during one such walk or round, he reached the door of a cottage where a little woman lived. She was baking cakes on the hearth. So, this is a hearth. It's a fireplace in the kitchen. So, while he was on a round, he reached the door of a cottage where the little woman lived and she was baking cakes on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her for her store of cakes to give him a single one. So, since Saint Peter had been walking throughout the day without eating anything, so when he reached the cottage, he was almost about to faint because of fasting. He therefore asked the old woman to give him one cake from her store of cakes. So the woman had so many cakes with her, so Saint Peter just asked for one cake because he was very hungry. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it and thought it seemed too large to give away. So the woman baked a cake, a very small cake for the saint, being selfish and greedy. When the cake was excuse me, almost done, she looked at it and thought that it seemed too large to be given away to someone. So the lady, the old woman, was not able to give that cake to the saint. So therefore, she needed another and still a smaller one. But it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. So now the lady, she took the dough again, this time even smaller than the previous one, and baked. But when she turned it over, it looked as big as the previous one. So she was not even able to give the second cake to the saint. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer. But she couldn't part with that. So now, third time, she took a very tiny piece of dough and this time rolled it flat. Now again, the little device of repetition has been used here to emphasize that the lady rolled and rolled till it was very flat and thin in the form of a thin wafer. But when she baked it, she couldn't even part with that. So when that cake was ready, she even could not give that cake to Saint Peter. So baked it thin as a wafer. So here a little device of simile has been used. So the cake, it has been compared to a wafer. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat them myself are yet too large to give away. So she put them on the shelf. So the self-centered lady said that when she herself had to eat the cakes, they seemed too small. But the same cakes felt too big to her when they were to be given away to someone. So what she did, she took all those cakes and put them back on the shelf. So she did not give any cake to Saint Peter. Now next stanza, then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. So of course Saint Peter, who was very hungry, who was waiting outside and was about to faint because of hunger, when even after a while the woman did not come with a cake, it infuriated Saint Peter. So he became very angry. And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter, and fire to keep you warm. So angry Saint Peter told the woman that she was too selfish to reside in human form, and she did not deserve food and shelter and even fire to keep her warm. So angry Saint Peter told the woman that she didn't deserve to live in a human form. Now you shall build as birds do. So Saint Peter, you can see, is cursing the woman. You shall build as the birds do and shall get your scanty food by boring and boring and boring all day in the hard dry wood. So he cursed the woman that from that day onwards she would build her own nest as birds do and would work hard all day to look for food by boring and boring into the hard and dry wood of trees. Because of his curse, the woman was turned into a bird woodpecker. So the woman was turned into a woodpecker because of the wrath of Saint Peter. Then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. So at that very instant she flew out of the chimney, never speaking a word. She flew out as a woodpecker, for she was changed into a bird because of her selfishness. So the old woman was changed into a woodpecker because of her greed. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burnt black as a coal in the flame. So you can see the clothes of the woman, they were burnt, and the scarlet cap on her head, that did not burn. So as she flew out of the chimney, all her clothes, they were burnt black as a coal. So this is again the literary device of simile being used here. But her scarlet cap on her head remained the same, that is, it did not burn. Therefore, we find woodpeckers having a red crest on their crown. So, this red crest on the crown is because the woman at that time was wearing a scarlet cap. Now, here in this line, you can see, but all the rest of her clothes were burned black as a coal in the flame. So, this third line is running on to fourth line. So this is the literary device of enjambment. So till now we have done literary device, we have done two similes, we have done repetition, we have done enjambment. And there's another simile when the poet compares the children to bear cubs, cute bear cubs. So that was another simile. Now next stanza, the last stanza. And every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring for food. So this is the woodpecker that lives in the forest now, and every schoolboy. So in the end, the poet says that people who live in the countryside or the rural areas, they have seen woodpeckers in the forest. Even small children who go to school, they have seen this bird digging the bark of the trees for food. So it no longer enjoys food, shelter, and fire. So you can see woodpecker holding this food from the bark, from underneath the bark. The woodpeckers, they pick their food by boring and boring, doing a lot of hard work throughout the day. So because of the curse of Saint Peter, the lady did not enjoy food, shelter, and fire any longer and had to toil for all these things. So this is the poem, and now we come to theme and the message. So selfishness is the greatest human curse. The poet, through this ballad, reinforces this idea. Selfish people are deprived of God's blessings. Instead, they have to bear the brunt of God's wrath. The old woman in the poem lacked human virtues of compassion, sense of belongingness, and sharing. She had to pay a heavy price for her greed. So this is the theme, and from here we will derive the message also. So thus the poet points out that caring and sharing are the highest human values, and one must imbibe them. The negative virtues should be kept at bay. It is a sin to let them flourish. The negative values ultimately lead to agony, suffering, and misery. So from here we have the message also that we should imbibe the highest human values, that are caring and sharing, and we should try to keep the negative virtues at bay, because ultimately one day the negative values or the negative virtues, they will lead to agony, suffering, and misery, like it happened to this old woman in the poem. Now the poet, through this ballad, reinforces the idea. So this poem, it is a ballad. Now what is a ballad? A ballad, it is a poem that narrates a story, and it is written in short stanzas. Like this poem, 16 stanzas with 4 lines. So it is a long poem because it narrates a story, but since it narrates a story and it has short stanzas, so it is known as a ballad. Now, next we move on to the self-evaluation test. So the self-evaluation test, 25 questions are there, and the marks of the questions are given in red here. So you can solve these questions. Answers I'll be posting after 2 days. So since it's a very easy poem, so you will be able to answer all these questions. Explanations I've already done. So these are the questions. I'm not reading the questions. I'll just pause at every slide for a while so that you can read them and then you can answer them. So you can also pause on a slide if you want to answer the questions. Now, after listening to the explanation, try to answer all these questions on your own. Obviously, I'll be posting the answers, and after I post the answers, you can check your answers. So like this, you'll be able to prepare the poem for your exams. So I've already answered that this poem is a ballad, and what is a ballad and why is this poem called a legend. So we'll be doing it when I'll give you the answers. These are the 25 questions, and now we have 10 MCQs. So you have to pick out the meaning of the word given in red according to the context of the line out of the 4 words that follow. So this is the line from the poem and the word in red. So you have to pick out the meaning of this word in red according to the context of the poem or context of the line. So this is the word and these are your 4 options. So again, number 2, this is the word curious and these are your 4 options. So I would like if you will write all these answers in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the comment box so that I would know your enthusiasm. I would love to see answers in the comment box. The answers to the MCQs before I post the answers, obviously. These are the 10 MCQs. And now we have questions based on the literary devices because I explained the literary devices as I was doing the explanation of the poem. So now these are the questions based on literary devices. What is the rhyme scheme? Write the rhyming words of the 11th stanza. Then give 3 examples of similes, repetition. So I've explained all this. And answers I'll be posting after 2 days. And these are the image credits. The images that I have taken, they are from these websites. That's all for today. So I hope that you liked it. So do subscribe for my channel. Give it a thumbs up. Do tell me how helpful did you find it and share the video with your friends so that everyone can watch it. In the playlist, there are other videos for 9th class. You can go and check and have a look at those videos.